Hi, this is Brittany Madison, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation. Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, guys, why is it almost every time I watch HBO boxing, I feel like somebody put me in a DeLorean time machine and took my ass back to 1930 or some shit like that? You know what? I'm going to do a separate video talking about racism and HBO. But for now, let's go ahead and just talk about Canelo Alvarez's performance. You know, going into this fight, I predicted that Canelo would win this fight. I've always thought that Canelo Alvarez's best chance of winning this fight is knocking out James Kirkland within the first 4 rounds. I've always said that if Kirkland got past the first 4 rounds, Canelo Alvarez may end up getting knocked out. And in a way, that's pretty much how this fight went. I have to say congratulations to Canelo Alvarez because that was a very vicious knockout that he scored in the 3rd round. Now, this is the time where I have to ask the Canelo fans a question. Do you guys want me to sugarcoat this and just tell you what you want to hear when it comes to Canelo Alvarez? Or do you want to hear the whole truth? Well, since this channel is based on speaking the whole truth, obviously, we're going to go with plan B. Now, listen, and once again, I don't want to talk too much about Max Kellerman's ignorance and Jim Lampley, but I will say, for someone to try to compare Canelo Alvarez fighting James Kirkland to Floyd Mayweather fighting against Manny Pacquiao, they need to not be taken serious. And that is the true definition of a decaf, a dumb, casual ass fan. You have James Kirkland, whose chin is as durable as a wet paper bag. Every single time you touch him, he's either staggering or getting knocked down or getting knocked out, right? And he's not like Vladimir Klitschko, where he does everything to protect that chin. No, James Kirkland, he comes in chin first. Once again, we'll talk a lot more about that in another video. But let's get into Canelo Alvarez's many flaws, okay? Because once again, you know, I know it's very easy to only remember the vicious knockout that Canelo Alvarez got. But believe it or not, there's a lot more to this fight than just the knockout. And if you guys look at what was going on before the knockout, you'll notice that Canelo Alvarez, he was starting to regress. Now, Canelo Alvarez is known to have stamina issues. We know that Canelo Alvarez is known for fighting in spurts. Canelo Alvarez, he reminds me of a video game where you have like an energy bar, and soon as you do your super move, that energy bar, you drain it basically. Then you have to sit around and wait for it to fill back up. That's the way Canelo Alvarez fights. He fights in those type of spurts. Now, what's so interesting with me saying this, me talking about his stamina and him fighting in spurts, is Canelo Alvarez, he made an interesting admission in his post-fight interview with Max Kellerman that pretty much corroborates everything that I'm saying right now. He said to Max Kellerman that we were both exhausted in the fight, me and James Kirkland. Now, to be 24 years old, and it's only the 3rd round in the fight, you're already exhausted? I find that statement to be shocking, honestly. I really do. And once again, it tells us a lot about Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez got hit with a lot of punches within these 3 rounds. James Kirkland, as far as I'm concerned, in some ways exposed Canelo Alvarez. Don't get me wrong, we already know Floyd Mayweather and Edeslani Lara exposed Canelo, but to me this is further exposure. Because I can guarantee you, The much better fighters, they're watching that performance and they're like, oh my God, this is perfect. Man, I hope I get Canelo next. This is what the fighters that are on Canelo Alvarez's level or beyond his level are saying right now. Like I just said, Canelo got hit with a lot of shots. What I thought was interesting is this, once again, this was supposed to be a war. And in some ways, it was a war. But yet at the same time, it was James Kirkland that was fighting on the inside. Once James Kirkland got on the inside and he was working and he was hitting Canelo with a lot of shots, Canelo Alvarez, he elected to hold him. Which is nothing wrong with holding, but the problem is they'll sit here and say that Floyd Mayweather, he holds. They'll sit over here and say that Andre Ward likes to hold. But we clearly seen Canelo Alvarez reach out to Kirkland and grab him to suppress the attack. We've seen him do this a couple of times instead of fighting his way out. Understand something, guys. This is what Canelo was supposed to do. Canelo's back was against the ropes, and he had a volume puncher exploding on him. That's what Canelo is supposed to do. So the point I'm making once again is all fighters are supposed to be created equal. So that means that when Floyd Mayweather has his back against the ropes and he ties up Manny Pacquiao, he should be treated the same way Canelo was tonight. Canelo did the exact same thing Floyd Mayweather did, and there were no boos, right? So overall, I thought the knockout was vicious. I give Canelo points for the knockout. Me watching this performance further convinces me that he wouldn't stand a chance against a Demetrius Andrade. He wouldn't stand a chance if he moved up and fought against a Golovkin. After this performance, I don't even think Canelo Alvarez can beat Miguel Cotto. You know, Canelo Alvarez, I see the same thing happening to him that happened to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Nonito Donaire. Let me explain. Both of those fighters that I just mentioned, they may not have the same style, but they both relied on their size and their power. We know that Nonito Donaire and Chavez, like Canelo Alvarez, they lack defense. We've seen Nonito Donaire in a lot of fights where he was getting hit with every punch in the book, but then he rallies back late and he gets maybe a knockdown or so, or he may even get a knockout. I think the Vic Darchinyan rematch was a perfect example of that. Vic Darchinyan was completely outboxing Donaire and pretty much winning the fight. And then eventually he got caught with something and got knocked out. Now that happened in a couple of Nonito Donaire fights where he was losing a lot of rounds and then he rallied back because he could walk through a lot of these smaller fighters with his size advantage. You know, he looked like a giant when he was fighting against Jorge Arce, Narvaez, and so on and so forth, right? But once he got in the ring with a guy who had the same type of power that he had, but probably had a better skill set, we seen that he wasn't able to just walk through those punches, right? And same thing happened with Chavez Jr. We know that Chavez Jr. doesn't really have a great defense. He's known for walking through a lot of punches. But that's also because he comes in the ring normally 20, 30 pounds bigger than his opponent. If Chavez was the same size as Sergio Martinez, he would have gotten knocked out. But he came in the ring like 30 pounds bigger than Sergio Martinez. But when Chavez got in the ring with Fonfara, he was finally fighting against a guy who could match his size and his power. And you've seen what happened. We seen Chavez get knocked down. We seen Chavez quit. I believe the same thing is going to happen to Canelo Alvarez. I believe eventually Canelo Alvarez, he's going to have to fight a guy who can match his power and his skill set. James Kirkland had the power, but he didn't have the chin or the skill set. And that was the difference. Now, I know this is not what you guys wanted to hear. I know you wanted to hear me say, oh my God, what a fantastic performance, and that's what boxing is all about, and so on and so forth. But no, over here, I'm going to tell you the whole truth. And the whole truth is they really need to protect Canelo Alvarez, because I truly believe that this is the beginning of the end when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. You know, it's funny because the world on the internet is different than the real world. Because people in the real world will normally tell you the truth. Like, for example, when it comes to Canelo, I've met a lot of Canelo Alvarez fans that have told me straight up, you know, Canelo Alvarez, his career has been going downhill since he lost to Floyd Mayweather, right? I've had people, you know, they'll start the conversation off praising Canelo. And then the more we talk, eventually they start to say this. I've had a couple of Canelo Alvarez fans tell me this. So what you guys hear me say, once again, you may not want to hear it, but I think even you guys know that it's true. I mean, I've talked to so many trainers, so many fighters, and they say the same thing about Canelo Alvarez. Miguel Diaz, the cut man Miguel Diaz, when I interviewed him, he said the same things that you hear me say right now, but he went a lot further than I went. Okay, and I'll just leave it at that. I mean, forget how you take it. Let's just be realistic and speak the whole truth. When you watch Terrence Crawford against Thomas Delorme, against Ray Beltran, Gamboa, what is your first thought after you watch him beat these opponents? I can guarantee you, regardless if you want to admit it or not, your first thought is, man, that dude is a problem for anyone. He's most likely going to beat whoever he fights, right? That is what you are thinking when you watch Terrence Crawford fight. When you're watching Vasyl Lomachenko, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, the thought is pretty much the same. Now I gotta ask you, when you watch Canelo Alvarez fight against Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, I ain't gonna even mention Mayweather. Like I said, Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, and now James Kirkland. Are you thinking of him the same way you would think of Terrence Crawford? Not at all. If we're being honest, not at all, right? I know it hurts your heart to acknowledge that that makes sense, but that's what it is. That's what it is. It's okay to root for Canelo Alvarez. Just remember, liking the guy and acknowledging how good he is two totally different things. Now, and I know how this works with these Canelo Alvarez fans because I've gotten to know them over the years that I've been doing this. So I'll just go ahead and say this right now. Before you start posting your racist messages because you disagree with my assessment, I want you to answer this question. If you disagree with what I'm saying and you believe that Canelo Alvarez is better than I'm giving him credit for, then you believe that he deserves a rematch with Floyd Mayweather because you said that he wasn't ready in the first fight, right? So what's the excuse now? Because he's ready now. At least if you disagree with my assessment, you must believe that he's ready. Or do you believe that he'll never be ready? Which one is it? I mean, don't sit over here and say, oh, you're hating on my boy Canelo and he's better than that and so on and so forth. Okay, well, if he's better, then why don't we go ahead and see a Mayweather-Canelo rematch? But I know y'all don't want to see that. Just like you guys never wanted to see a Mayweather versus Juan Manuel Marquez rematch. Because see, you sit over here and you make excuses, but you make sure you don't never talk about a rematch. Because you know that the same thing is going to happen in a rematch. The excuses that you use is just therapy. That's the way you get over the loss, right? To try to convince yourself that there's a consolation prize. And the consolation prize is, let me make up an excuse. That's pretty much all I got. I'm on to the next one.